The Kent PD case where Officer Diego Moreno was hit laying down spike strips by a young teenager who has now been, he wasn't hit by the teenager, but he was hit as a result of chasing and trying to stop that teenager. And so now we're going to dig into really the law. That teenager has been charged with murder. And so joining us today is Kimberly Ambrose, a former public defender and current professor at the University of Washington Law School. Thank you very much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So he was in court today. The judge upheld it. He's being held on $1 million bail, saying that the prosecutor says he's responsible for this murder, even though he was allegedly driving the truck that Officer Moreno was trying to stop with the stop sticks, and then a patrol officer hit Officer Moreno. So the defense says, well, he wasn't driving the vehicle that hit Officer Moreno. I want to get your thoughts on leveling a very serious charge like this in murder. His defense attorney says it should be manslaughter. What do you think about this?
Yeah, so what he's charged with in this case is kind of a controversial law. It's called the felony murder rule. And what it means is that the state can charge you with murder when you didn't actually commit the murder or even intend to commit the murder. So it's really unusual that you could be charged with something that you didn't intend to do. And the reason why we have that rule is there's this idea that the consequences, if you are committing, in the process of committing any felony and somebody dies, that you should have foreseen that someone could get hurt. And so it's controversial because of the proof requirements and because it doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense in terms of how can you be a murderer if you didn't kill someone. But because some things are so serious, like in this situation, the basis, I think, is because we think that the law says that it should maybe deter folks from committing crimes, or because of just retribution, that if somebody dies, somebody needs to pay for that. And it's particularly controversial for a young person because we know that young people can't foresee consequences. Children can't foresee consequences in the same way that adults can. So a 16-year-old driving fast, recklessly, engaging in very dangerous behavior, we know that juveniles do that because their brains are less developed. So I think it's particularly controversial in this case because of the age of the driver.
So nationally, I guess there's kind of a move away from holding juveniles responsible as adults based on some of the science that you're talking about. What's the history of King County as far as charging them? And a lot of times you have these drive-by shootings, and we see them when they're 16. They're almost automatically charged as adults.
Right. So, so this trend in the 1990s is when many state legislatures all over the country started to put more young people back into the adult system. It was a tough-on-crime period of time. And it's just recently, in fact, just this month, our legislature actually started to change that. And there are now going to be fewer folks that automatically go into the adult system. And the other thing about our particular county is that it's completely within the discretion of our prosecutor what to charge. So, for example, this young person could have just been charged with attempting to elude an officer, which is the crime that he was allegedly engaging in by running from the police. But instead, our prosecutor has decided to charge this more serious offense, and I think it's because of the great loss, the tragedy that has occurred, which is horrible for the community.
I mean, you're talking about a lot of lives ruined here. There were 2 other teens also that were in the truck with them. But at the same time, we had more than 30 shots fired, alcohol being used. So there was a clear danger to the public, according to the police report. Do you think that this case might be the one that ends up in the state Supreme Court and ends up setting some precedent? Because this one does seem very unusual.
Yeah, it could, because again, as I said, I think there's a lot of folks that don't like this felony murder rule because, again, the state doesn't have to actually prove criminal intent, which is normally what we think the state must prove in order to charge you. So perhaps it could, and perhaps the prosecutor may also, our prosecutor here has shown that he definitely believes the brain science and that he understands that kids are different, and I think he takes a look at these decisions very carefully. The problem is it's so soon, right? This just happened a week ago, so I'm not sure that anybody really knows a lot about this young man and really what circumstances, how immature he actually was, and so I think that more This is why I think in some ways judges should make this decision, right, with respect to whether children should be tried as adults or not. In this case, the prosecutor has made that decision, but he could change his mind as more facts come to light. And he could decide that, in fact, age is really important and that we shouldn't necessarily label a young person a murderer. Especially, I think, in this case, also, we have what you mentioned, which is alcohol being served to 16-year-olds, guns being provided by other adults. And I think we as a community need to decide, how do we apportion responsibility in a situation like this? It would be easy just to blame the 16-year-old and label him a murderer and hold him fully responsible, and then not take a look at some of these other circumstances that I think that we all need to take a look at as community members.
Yeah, certainly the community believes somebody needs to pay, but we'll see in what form that is. Kimberly Ambrose, thanks so much for stopping by and providing some perspective for us. We appreciate it.